Hello, Brother Monroe here. Welcome to Ultimate Admiral Dreadnoughts, and this is a special video celebrating the Steam release of the game. Very exciting, and hopefully, if you found this video, you're someone who's picked up the game now that it's out on Steam, and you're probably wondering what on earth you should be doing. If you're a long-time viewer of my channel, there's plenty of in-depth stuff that you can look at. But if you're brand new to the game, this is for you. So. What do we have when you launch the game? This main screen. There are basically three ways you can play the game at the moment. The Naval Academy. This is essentially a tutorial. If you're wanting help on any of that, I have a video on the first 30 missions up already on YouTube. I will be finishing the others when I get some time. So feel free to check those out. You have campaigns. You can start a new campaign. By all means, have a go. That's probably the most fun aspect of Ultimate Admiral Dreadnoughts at the moment. And if you want to see me playing through the UK's 1890 campaign, or the German 1910 campaign, or the UK 1930 campaign, all of those will be out on my channel in the near future. However, probably what most people will do when they pick up the game is to hit custom battle, choose a side of their liking. I'm going to choose the British, crank the game's tech level up to 1940, which is the maximum, crank the range up as well, and build a battleship of your dreams, because let's face it, that is the most fun. And you hit design ship down here, and you'll end up at this screen. Now, there's an awful lot going on here, and it can be a little bit intimidating. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through just the basics of how to put a ship together. And if you're wanting more in-depth guide to how to make your ship actually good, I'll be covering that later on. So first things first, you should look down the bottom here. This is where you can choose your hull, first of all, and then all the various bits that go on it. So you have a choice here between 5 different hulls. I'll just go with the super battleship. It's the biggest. Then, main towers, you need one. So just pick whichever one you fancy. I'm going to go with that one. You need a secondary tower as well. Let's just go with, I don't know. Let's go with this one. Just whichever one takes your fancy. You need at least a funnel, so we'll stick a funnel on there. You need some guns, and you might want some barbettes. These are completely optional. These things are basically just there to stick out of the hull, so you can have guns that shoot over other guns. So now let's get an enormous one at the front like that. And of course we're just going to go stupidly big, get some big guns, lovely stuff, and then you have your secondary guns. So with main guns you have centerline and sides, and then once you pick your caliber you can choose the number of guns per turret. So I'm just going with the biggest, baddest 20-inch quad barrels, because why not? And then with secondary guns you have various calibers. And when you select them, so for the 8-inch, there's pretty much nothing showing up on the ship. I can put them wherever I like, though. I don't have to put them anywhere particular. I can put them wherever I want. But if you go down to a smaller size, say a 6-inch, you'll see that you get mounting points appearing on your towers. And it's not true for all towers, but most towers have some mounting points for small guns. Particularly if you go down to 2-inch or 2-inch single barrel, there are lots of little places you can stick smaller weapons, which are mostly there for show, to be honest, or to represent anti-aircraft armament, but they can actually prove useful shooting up destroyers and transports and things like that. Casement guns or casemate guns, you'll find these on earlier hulls. This one doesn't have any, but again, same thing applies for the secondary guns. You can sometimes stick them in surprising places up on your towers and things, particularly like 2 or 3-inch casements. And lastly, you have torpedo tubes. You have deck torpedo tubes, which you can put pretty much anywhere. on the ship. And some hulls, not all, have underwater torpedo tubes, which are single launchers. So this one, yeah, two each side if you wanted them. Some have fore and aft launchers. Now, once you kind of thought about what you want to put down, then you'll want to actually finish the ship off. You could just go straight away and try this ship out, but there's a lot more to what's going on. So if we look up at the top here, we see that our weight, or our displacement, we're using 81,420 tons out of 86,500 tons, which is 94% of our available displacement. So we could make the ship bigger if we wanted to, and the way we do that is using this slider here, which you can drag around, and you'll notice that at certain points it does actually make the ship physically larger, like that. So we can actually make our entire ship larger, which kind of moves things around, so you'll have to adjust to compensate. So we'll just go for a maximum sized one, because why not? Then you have your speed as a slider. If you increase your speed, that does take up more displacement, more engines and stuff, or you can reduce it to save weight. But there's another thing you should take into account when you're looking at speed, and that's one of these statistics. Now, there's a lot of them. But if you scroll all the way to the bottom, there is this statistic down here, engine efficiency. And generally speaking, you want this to be as close to 100% as you can manage. Now, at the moment, it's not very good, but that is partly because our engine technology is the worst it could possibly be for this era. So let's get into how the technology works. So down here you have the various components on your ship, and you can adjust these. So for a start, we could change. So at the moment we're using semi-oil, but if we use high-grade fuel oil, so oil 3, then you'll notice that changes a few things. It changes our displacement, so it's lighter, but it also changes the cost, going from 128 to nearly 137 million. But it also increases our engine efficiency, which is nice. We can change our engine type. We could go, and there are lots of different options here. But let's say we wanted to go with gas turbines, which is very, very fancy. That has not increased our engine efficiency at all. Now, another thing we could do to increase that is to put on a funnel, like so. And now we have 100% engine efficiency, which is very nice. And if we increase our speed, we'll get to a sweet spot at, yeah, around 27 knots. You can also type up here, and you can do the same for displacement. So 27 knots, we can go at 100% engine efficiency, which is very nice. You then have an auxiliary engine, which you can bring along if you want. Very nice as well. You have your steering gear. Again, as you go along, the further to the right for the components generally is more expensive, more advanced, and better technology. Rudders, this is just a choice. I did go for balanced, but if you just leave it on semi-balanced, it's not a problem at all. And advanced propeller shaft, why not? So, back up here, we have range. Now, this is how far your ship can travel. It is not the range of your guns. In custom battles, this is completely irrelevant, but in the campaign, this is a very important statistic. More range means you have access to more missions in more sea regions, and you get access to special missions and things like that. So it's really, really important, but not for a custom battle, so we'll just drop that to minimum. Bulkheads, that's how your ship is divided up inside. More bulkheads means you are harder to sink. And I wouldn't go with anything less than standard bulkheads. Standard bulkheads is perfectly acceptable. But if you go for many or maximum, then you will have a very, very tough ship. You then have crew. This is only something you get access to in custom battles. In the campaign, you actually have to train your crew up. but let's give ourselves a super crew. And your quarters, standard is absolutely fine. You may want to put cramped on if you want to save some weight, which is okay if you're doing destroyers and things like that. Or you can set it to spacious if you're building something like a flagship or something like that. So it helps with keeping your ship operating at full capacity if it takes hits. And I believe it also affects crew experience gain as well. So that's all our propulsion set up. Next we have protection. We can change our armor type. So we'll just go for the best. Change our barbette protection. Now this does not just affect this thing, the superimposed barbette, but also affects all your turrets, your whole ship. Because underneath this turret there is a barbette that extends down into the hull, down to the magazines. And you can adjust this to whatever you want. I wouldn't go with anything less than standard barbette thickness for your ships. You can also, if you look at the statistics screen, see this. This is your flash fire chance. It's right above weights and costs. You do not want this to be 9%. Basically, what that means is every time your ship takes a penetrating hit, there's roughly a 9% chance that your ship will go boom, and that's a very bad thing. So, given that we're using 20-inch guns, which are quite explosive things, let's go for maximum barbette thickness. You then have your anti-torpedo protection, and this has been fixed. So just increasing levels of anti-torpedo protection. So just in case you are hit by a torpedo, this will significantly reduce the damage that you take. You can also add a double or a triple bottom hull, which again reduces your chance of being damaged from torpedoes currently, but it also reduces the damage that you take from shells generally, because of course there's multiple hulls to go through. We'll just go for a double bottom hull today, I think. You then have your citadel choice. In 1940 we have 3 choices: an armoured citadel, which is kind of the old-fashioned tech; turtleback, where you are kind of designing to try and protect everything; or the all or nothing, where you have super strong citadel but the rest of the ship can be pretty weak. We'll go for the all or nothing, because it was the kind of state of the art. Anti-flooding systems, just what the best one you can get, really. You can reinforce your bulkheads, really helps stop your ship exploding. It also reduces your flash fire chance. You see we're now down to 2%. Then we have armament. You can change how big your shells are, so you can have lighter shells, heavier shells, or ridiculously heavy shells, depending. The heavier the shell, the more damage they do, the more accurate they are, but the slower they fire. And the more likely your ship is to explode, so do be careful with that. And then you have propellants, and in this era you basically have a choice of Cordite 3 or triple base, which is a slightly improved version. And these two give you more damage at the cost of slightly increased chance of your ship exploding. Or you can go for the tube powders, and there's a lesser and a more advanced version which give you more penetration. So we'll just go for the triple base today. Then you can choose what explosives are inside your shell. Generally speaking, you want to go for the far right hand option. We'll go for TNT4 in this case. There's also picric acid if you are going for more of a ship designed to take out light ships. This would be ideal because it gives you buff to damage, but it makes your shells less likely to go through armor. You can choose how your turrets are controlled. Usually advanced hydraulic is fine, you don't need anything more than that, but if you want very rapidly turning turrets, you can go for electro-hydro turrets. Do be careful though, they do increase your hull weight and your engine weight, and your chances of the ship going boom. So if you just want a slightly faster turret but none of the disadvantages, apart from things being slightly heavier and slightly more expensive, then advanced hydraulic is fine. And then your reloading, you can go for fully automatic guns on 20-inch guns, which is quite crazy, but your semi-automatic or enhanced is usually enough for most things. And then lastly, we have equipment. We have a rangefinder. That's very important. There's two types, coincidence and stereoscopic. Stereoscopics are better at shooting at long range, and coincidence is a more balanced, more balanced rangefinder, where it just makes your guns more accurate generally. And I tend to prefer coincidence rangefinders. They're also cheaper and lighter. Acoustics, so you can get a hydrophone or sonar for listening out for torpedoes, although in the future this may well allow you to detect submarines. Now let's just give it a hydrophone. It's a battleship after all, it doesn't really need sonar. Radio, you have two things here. The radio telegraph, this improves your communications range, which doesn't really do much at the moment, apart from give a slightly larger flagship bonus. So this is useful on a flagship, but really this is not particularly important technology at the moment. Or you can get the radio direction finder, which is very, very useful if you don't have access to the next thing I'm going to talk about. Excuse me, because it allows you to detect enemy ships. But better at that is radar, much, much better. And this also allows you to use radar to control your gunnery. So very, very important technology. You definitely want to get hold of that. Now, as you can see, we have a slight issue. Something has turned red. The ship is overweight by 5%. Now, that is not the best news. And there are a few other issues with our ship. One is, you see this here, it says 4 weight offset, 16.7%. Now, that is not very good. What that'll do is cause all sorts of problems for our ship in terms of how our ship performs. And you can see here all the different things that it does. Reduces our accuracy, increasing the chance that we flood, reduces our acceleration, reduces the speed we can turn at, reduces our range on the campaign map. So we really don't want an offset. And we're also overweight. So one of the things we could do, given that we have a pretty nice setup, I think, is we could reduce the size of our guns a little bit. Let's go with 18-inch triple guns. Okay, then that gets us nice and underweight. So that's absolutely fine. And it means we could bring some more armor. Now, the armor in Ultimate Admiral is fairly detailed. There are 8 main armor categories, and then for each of your turrets there are 2 values. So I'll just very quickly explain what you'll do. So your first one is your main belt armor. That is the belt armor that kind of runs along the side of the ship like this. And it protects most of the ship. So on this hull, the main belt will run from probably about here to about here. You want to make sure all of your guns and your towers are inside that area. So you kind of want everything to be nice and centralized so that it is protected by your main belt armor. And what sort of value should you be looking at here? Well, it's a little complicated, but a basic rule of thumb is if you're running an 18-inch gun, you want your main belt to be kind of equivalent to the caliber of your gun. That will give you plenty of protection. There's a lot more to it than that, but that's the basics of it. So let's go with an 18-inch main belt. The next most important armor to consider is your main deck. That is the armor underneath the wooden deck that you see here. Now, on the vast majority of warships, I believe the armored deck was located pretty much here in the middle of the ship. Some ships did raise it, but don't quote me on that. Rough rule of thumb, your main deck, you want it to be about half of your main belt. Depends on era and things, but we'll go with a 9-inch main deck. That should be plenty of protection. You then have your fore and aft belts. That protects the front of the ship, or the back of the ship, sorry, the aft and the front of the ship from incoming fire. Now, They do not have to be as thick, because often when you know, you're taking shells from the front, you know, they're gonna glance off anyway. But it is useful to have these armoured up to protect against lighter guns, particularly things like cruisers. We're looking at a battleship. So again, rough rule of thumb: if you can get it up to half of your main belt, that is a pretty good guide. So we'll go for 9-inch on our fore and aft belts. Then you again similarly have your fore and aft deck, and pretty much the same principle applies. I would go for, if you can, half of your main deck armor. Again, this is all very much a rough rule of thumb. Lastly, you have your superstructure armor. That is the armor on your all the stuff that sticks out of the deck, and your conning tower armor that is, well, represents the bridge and things like that. So this bit here. Now, your conning tower armor, you kind of want that to be the same as your main belt armor. Superstructure armor is extremely heavy, and I would, if you can, try and get it to the same level as your fore and aft deck, if you can, but it is very, very heavy, and this is mostly to protect you against light ships, destroyers and things like that, coming along and ruining your battleship's day by kind of blowing off important bits like, you know, your radar and things like that. So don't worry too much about this. This is a really good way of saving weight. You don't need a lot of superstructure armor. And then for your turret armor, I would say take the caliber of gun and add 2. So in this case, we want a 20-inch side. And for the top armor, take your side armor and just do half. So we'll go for 20-inch on the face and 10-inch on the side. Now, for your secondary guns, you don't need to worry about those too much. This is already as armoured as we can be. As you can see, I can't increase these. So don't worry too much about your secondary guns. And that's our ship pretty much done. We are at 98% of our displacement, which is absolutely fine. And all we have to do now is to reduce our full weight offset from 11.8 down to as close to 0 as we can manage. Now, the first thing you want to do is you kind of want to fiddle with your towers first. And all you're doing is you're just picking them up and moving them around. Sometimes the game will irritatingly pick up your secondary tower at the same time when you don't want it to. Which one was I using? That one. If you do mess up, don't worry too much. It's pretty easy to fix. You can copy a gun, by the way, by pressing the middle mouse button, which makes things a little bit easier. So, yeah, now you're not picking it up, are you? So just move this back a little bit. Move this back a little bit. See, now we're at 5.2%. Okay, so once you think you've got your towers roughly centered, then you can start to move your guns around. So we want to bring our forward batteries just a bit close to the center. Now we're at 3.1%, so we're close, but I think we still need to adjust our towers a little bit. You can hold down Control, by the way, and you get more kind of precision placement. See, now we have a little bit of an halfway offset, so we've done that too much. Yeah, let's go for that. And now the ship is perfectly balanced. We have no weight offset at all. So even though it looks a little bit uglier with that gap between the towers, you can see in there that there's little kind of doors and things. We'll run with that, even though it's not the best looking. And yeah, I'm pretty pleased with that. So once you're happy with your ship, the Goliath here, you can rename this, by the way. If you're doing the campaign, this renames the lead ship of the class, but it unfortunately you can't rename all your ships. If you're doing a custom battle, it will name one of your ships, whatever you write here, and then the others will be will be generated by the AI. Now you can add more designs here. For instance, if I was running lots of different ships, I'd have different options up here. Same process for different ship types, but we'll worry about that some other time. You're happy with the ship, hit launch, and the game will build an opponent for you. So the AI will generate a unique ship every time. So here we go. That's a very unique ship. And then you just hit start battle. Now, once you are into the battle, and I've just gone with a single ship because it is much easier that way. Looks nice. Anyway, I always get distracted by how pretty the game is. Control your ship, left click to select and right click to order it to move. You'll see this arrow shows you the heading that the ship is coming to, and this line, dotted line, shows you the predicted course that the ship will take. So obviously, being a 92,000 ton warship, it will take a while. And you may be seen a little yellow line pinging up like that. That is our radar, or RDF, if that's all you've got, showing us where the enemy ship is. So the enemy ship is somewhere over there. So we'll allow the Goliath to complete its turn. See, it does roll when it does this. And up here, you can change how fast the game simulation is running. So we'll just go up to times 30 because we want to catch up to the enemy. And we've spotted them. Once you've spotted the enemy, they will show up here. You can double click on them and the camera will zoom over and show you the enemy ship. Now, you can tell quite a lot about the enemy ship just by visually looking at it. So this thing has 4 main guns, which are quite large, and a lot of secondary guns, and 2 very small funnels. So I'm not expecting this ship to be particularly fast, and we're just wondering how big those guns are. Now, at the moment, you can actually tell. If you click on the ship, you'll get this little box. This is the shoot info box. And this is telling me what guns the enemy ship has. It has 2 twin 20-inch guns. That's this gun and this gun. It has 6 twin 8-inch guns, which presumably these ones. It has 26 triple 3-inch guns, which spread all over it. 8 twin 3-inch guns. We don't really care about 3-inch guns. And 1 triple 8-inch gun, which is this one right at the front here. So a lot of secondary armament, which against our battleship really isn't going to matter very much. Now, what can you do with your ship? Well, these are the orders you can give your ship. Aside from telling it to move, it will automatically lock on to and engage enemy targets once it's in range. This button here, this will give control of the ship to the computer. If I press that, it will then kind of order our ship to move in. This is your movement order. So steady is just, I'm controlling you. But if you have multiple ships, you can put them on screen, scout, or follow orders. Don't worry too much about those just now. But if you're controlling a large fleet, you can use these orders to control your lighter ships, or you can order it to retreat, just run away. In here, this is part of the division controls. You can choose line ahead or line abreast, tight, standard, or loose formations. Here you can choose the shell type. I recommend that you leave it on auto nearly all the time, but if you want to change it from auto to HE or AP, you can do that. This will affect all the guns on the ship. At the moment, if you leave it on auto, the main guns will probably fire AP shells at the battleship, and the secondaries, if they ever get into range, will fire high explosive, because the AP shells probably won't go through. So auto allows you to do mixed firing. If you select one of these, then you'll be locked out of that. Main guns, you can select their fire mode. So normal, you can choose it to save, so they'll only shoot if they think they can hit. Or aggressive, they will just shoot as soon as they're in range. And you can do the same for the secondaries. And then you have here torpedo control, don't have any. Smoke, don't have any because we're a battleship. And this is for controlling your divisions. This button here, this is reverse. This will ruin your ship. Very, very situational when this is useful. Ultimate Admiral has ships that are big, and they behave like they're big. This thing is currently travelling at 27 knots. And this is my speed slider here. If I set this to full stop, you can see the speed hasn't changed at all. These are big, big ships. They take a long time to change speed, and they can take a long time to change direction as well. So, if you're used to certain other games where, you know, ships stop on a dime, not the case here. We're just going to go at flank speed because we want to close to the enemy. And up here you also have a manual rudder control as well, if you prefer that. But I prefer just clicking and using the come to new heading order. Right, well that's enough of that. Let's go to times 10. Let's close in on our German enemy here, who has moved. Now, if you zoom out using the mouse scroll wheel, you can see we're just about to come in range. And now that we're in range, our guns have locked on, and they have started to fire. And at the moment, we can only fire A and B turret. X turret back here is blocked by our tower. So one thing we could do is we could adjust our heading just slightly, so that we can fire all of our guns. Keep going. We'll get it eventually. There we go. So all the guns are now firing. And they will continue to do so until the enemy is sunk. Now, if you are facing multiple ships, your secondary guns are capable of firing individually. So, let's say an enemy destroyer popped up over here, my 6-inch and 2-inch guns would start firing at that instead. The ship will choose the target it feels is the biggest threat to it. So if you're sailing a battleship, and then, you know, there's an enemy battleship over there, that's what it's going to fire at. But let's say an enemy cruiser came in very, very close, you will see the battleship switch fire to deal with that threat. Here you can see the chance to hit. This is per gun. So obviously we're firing 9, so it's slightly higher than that. If we select the Goliath and hover over the enemy, we get a more detailed breakdown of what's happening. And we can also see that the enemy is heading away from us. So we're kind of headed on parallel courses, but you know, they're not coming in to attack us or anything like that. Now we have been exchanging hits. You can see they've taken a little bit of damage. Ships in Ultimate Admiral have 2 damage bars. A red one and a blue one. Or, well, it's a different colour for your ships, but same idea. The red one represents the structural integrity of the ship, and the blue one represents the floatability of the ship. And as you can see there, we just hit them, and we did 86 points damage. And we reduced their structure a little bit. That is probably the slowest way to take out ships, is reducing their structure to 0. Once the structure has gone to 0, basically the ship is Swiss cheese and falls apart. If you reduce their float to 0, then there's too much water on board, and they sink. And there is a third way of taking out enemy ships, which is to set every single compartment of the ship on fire. Now that can happen with battleships, although it's fairly rare. We take a hit in return, and we take 233 damage pretty nasty, and that shows you the difference between the 20 and the 18-inch gun. So we're down to 92% structure, but they're down to 80. So we're hitting them more often. Now, we have had the enemy spotted long enough to identify them. This takes time, and we can now actually find out all sorts of information about the ship. They're slightly faster than us, they're slightly larger than us, they obviously have bigger guns, they're not as well armoured, and they're obviously not as good at hitting, 4.2% compared to our 14%. So we'll just have to hope that our superior armour and higher rate of fire and accuracy can take them out. Obviously they've only got 4 guns, so they're not shooting that many shells at us, but they do hurt when they hit. But they can run away from us. Now, if you are faced with this situation, which is quite common in the campaign, where the enemy is running away from you, you want to damage the enemy ship. As enemy ships take damage, they start to slow down. In fact, you can see that if you click on this, and this little arrow up here. You can tell how fast it's able to go. Speed has been reduced to 25.1 knots. So we are slowly catching up. Now, if we cause any flooding hits, those slow the ship down a lot more, and there's critical damage and things like that as well, which I'll talk about when they turn up. But as you can see here, we're setting your fire. Now, fires do damage over time, not a huge amount, but they can be significant. If you look here, you can see that this ship, the Treefrog, has taken about 1,600 points of damage. 400 of that has been from us setting fires. Another thing you can do is if you select your own ship and hover over the enemy ship, which is a little hard to do because they're so far away. It's a very, very long-ranged duel, but you can move the camera around to do this. You can see here, you get the chances of your shell going through the enemy ship, and you get a little picture. The red areas are areas where our shells are not going to be able to penetrate, so the main belt, but we can hurt the rest of the ship. And as we hurt the rest of the ship and cause it to slow down, we can close in, which will increase our chances to bend, and once we're able to go through the main belt, then that's when we can really start to do a lot of damage to this enemy vessel. Or at least that's the plan. Our angle looking like it's closing a little bit. We can also compare costs. This thing is 420 million, and our own ship is 600 million. Now, one thing we're noticing here, we're starting to get low on shells. We fired a lot already. We're down to 303. Now, if this is happening to you, you can go on to save, but because we have a 16% chance to hit, the ship's going to keep firing. You can, however, just completely turn your guns off. So let's do that, and let's close in a little bit, because they are slower than us by about 3 knots. If you're finding this is happening to your ships, you can increase the amount of ammunition that they carry in the ship builder. Most of the time you will not need to do that. However, they have fewer shells than we do. They have 194. So we can use that to our advantage, and we can start to close in. Now you'll notice that the time compression here has been going down. As you get closer to the enemy, that does happen. The game locks you into going to 5%. And we can do manual fire control, switching our guns off, and then on, and then off. So you can fire selective bursts. still 23. Ours is 26, so we're not closing in on them exactly, particularly speedily. Come on, give me a hit. If you hover over as well, you can see the over on the left the chance to hit for a full salvo, which is 56.9%. So basically got a 50-50 chance when I shoot the 6 guns of causing a hit. But just because you hit doesn't mean that it is necessarily going to do any damage. No, enemy's still headed away from us. Let's try more shots. We're about 23 kilometers away, so this has been a very, very long range engagement. Ah, there we go. Got a hit. Did a little bit of damage and caused the fire. And they hit us right back. Let's see if we can get another hit in. Nope. We're close to about 22.6 kilometers. Quite disappointing. But this shows you why speed is important. If you are not faster than your enemy, they will be able to do this to you. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to open up. I'm just going to fire all the guns, because I don't want this video to take forever. We're a little bit closer now. We'll empty our magazines at them and they can run away in shame. A shader bug, because this has been going on so long. If you do see this happening, it's basically this battle's been going on so long and we've travelled so far, the ship has gone out of the game's light box. Come on. Now, if you look down here, you can see all the damage report. If you click low, this will tell you, well, I did actually hit him twice, but two of the shells ricocheted. So the 2 hits I got, they ricocheted off. And this is one of the things that can happen. The shell comes in, and it just happened to me. So the shells came in, they hit the belt armor or the deck armor, and they just bounce off, without doing any damage. Ooh, there we go. Some actual damage, and of course a little bit of flooding, which they pretty much immediately patched up. Now, if this was the campaign, the Braunschweig here, she's suffered quite a lot of crew loss. 18%, that is very high. And she suffered quite a lot of damage. This ship would be out of action for months. Ooh, my goodness. Okay, so there we hit her steering gear. So now her rudder is damaged, which will severely reduce her mobility. Just there we got a partial penetration on a main tower. That's where the shell does hit the armor and kind of dents it, but doesn't go through. We're nearly out of shells. Destroyed a funnel, and if you look at the enemy ship, you can see here on the diagram, the red sections are areas of the ship that have taken very heavy damage. The lit up areas are areas that have taken some damage. You can see here water starting to come into the ship, which is good for us, because that means she will slow down. Although we're going to run out of shells in a minute. You can also see here any critical damage, so engines, rudder, captain being hit, that kind of thing. And you can see fires, so if you see a compartment kind of blinking, that's a fire. And if we look at our own ship, you can see we've taken much, much less damage. You know, a couple of hits to the decks, and that's about it. So yeah, we've got a bit of a hole just there. That's not too much. One more salvo and we'll be done. And I'll end the video there. A little bit disappointing, but it does happen sometimes. Make sure you build your ships to be fast enough. Yeah, we're out of ammunition. So, at the end of the battle, you can, in the campaign, you'll get a button up here to end the battle, but you can leave the battle completely. You can rebuild your ship, or you can just restart the battle, which will do the battle over, and it will give you a completely different ship if you do that. So if we quickly click that, you'll see that the AI will come up with a completely different design, which we'll just have a very quick look at. Your ship will stay exactly the same. So you can test out your ship. Another thing you can do is if you go to leave battle, you can then, for instance, well, I want 2 of my battleships, but I want them to have a couple of smaller ships. And when you hit design ships, your design will still be there. If you add, say, I want a battlecruiser so I can chase them down, you'll see here you can now build a battlecruiser, or you can let the AI build the battlecruiser for you if you're feeling particularly brave. Anyway, that's all I wanted to cover today. Very quick look, just how you can get into game, how you can start playing, and how you can start shooting up your enemies as quickly as possible. I hope it's proven useful. If it has, give the video a like. Put a comment down below if there's anything that you are struggling with. And please feel free to check out all my other videos. I have much more detailed tutorials on ship design and how to go into that sort of thing. I have videos on the Naval Academy, and I have campaign playthroughs. So feel free to check all of those out. And I hope to see you again for some more Ultimate Admiral Dreadnoughts. Bye for now.